The subject that I would like to talk about today is surrender. So what does it mean to surrender? So what happens is that when you were about 3 or 4 years old, something called identification happened. And that means that you identified with your name, your body, your past, your future, your ideas, your feelings, your thoughts. And there was this like grabbing onto it and identification. Prior to that age, you'd not been anything. Like if you ask like a 1-year-old, who are you? The baby's like, doesn't know who it is. It just is. And it's not anything. It just is boundless. It doesn't have a name. It doesn't have a form. It doesn't have an identity. You could say it's nothing, but yet it is everything. Some people would like to say it's in pure consciousness, which means the same to me as nothing and everything. It's just this simple looking that's everywhere, this experiencing of life. And then at about the age of 2 or 3 or 4 years old, this identification with the personality structure happens. And there is this belief that that is who you are, and a forgetting that who you were prior to being that. So you weren't always that. So it's a forgetting that there was something there prior to you, prior to your ideas, your thoughts, your belief systems, your ideologies, your likes, your dislikes. And then this identification happens. It's like sticky tape, and it sticks onto everything, and it's always trying to make up an identity, and it gets obsessed with maintaining pleasure and avoiding pain. And so it wants to make the identity the best identity it can possibly be, whatever it holds up to be those ideals, whether it holds it up to be compassionate or loving or really successful in its work field, to be funny, to be likable, to be popular. So it wants to be the best possible version of itself, and it sets all these ideas of what you need to be. So there's this identification with it, and then there is too much investment in pleasure and investment in your sense of self. And none of this is consciously happening, it's all happening unconsciously. And it's one of those things that unfortunately can become problematic, because the more that you try to maintain a pleasure, so the more that you try to hold on to a pleasure, the more you actually lose the pleasure, the more that you kill the pleasure. Something we like about doing new things is the spontaneity of it and the innocence, and your reaction is totally new and fresh. Whereas when you've done things many times before, it's no longer new and fresh, your response to it. And then what happens is you keep trying to get that new experience again. So you keep trying to hold on to it rather than seeing it for what it is. So if it's going on a walk, like the same walk every day or something, rather than experiencing that new and fresh in the moment, you're comparing it to what you've experienced in the past and judging whether it's better or worse, and then also judging if it's similar to that experience. So say if you're with a new person, there's always this judgment going on and this comparison, and what your mind is looking for is the most amount of pleasure for you, which is a natural thing for the body. That's the wisdom of the body, is to move towards pleasure and to avoid pain, like to not run into the fire or to not get eaten by the lion, to sit in the sunshine when it's warm, and to avoid freezing cold temperatures. So that's wisdom of the body, like moving towards pleasure. It's how the body learns. It learns also by getting pleasure from reinforcement of the parents. When the child does something good, it gets pleasure. Parents say, well done, and it's like, ba-bing, 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 ba-bing. It's a pleasure. You could imagine it like, you know, those bing signs that when you're on a game on your iPhone, it says like, ta-ding, ta-ding, when you do something right, and there's a nice feeling with it. But when you identify with becoming that person, the pleasure becomes too important, and you begin to live too much in your thinking mind rather than in actual experience. So it's too much in what you've experienced before, what you're going to experience in the future. And what it does when you live too heavily in the third eye chakra is it makes your experience dead. It deadens the rest of the senses. So it's always about comparison. It's not as good as it was before. It's better than it was before. It lacks than before, rather than actually experiencing it for what it is, like feeling the feeling of the temperature on your skin, the feeling that it makes you feel on your feet as you walk, the sight of the sunshine that day, the sound of the trees that day. And rather than actually experiencing that, you're experiencing your imagined idea of what it could be, should be, you want it to be. And what you want it to be is to live up to your ideals of pleasure. So this is what identification does. It's not so much the identity that's the problem, the personality structure, the problem. It's the identification with that, and then this moving from living in your body and living in the experience to living in this thinking area of your brain and constantly looking at everything through thoughts. Because that's what happens when you identify. As soon as you identify, you are always imagining yourself. So that's why it's connected to the thinking process. You have this like image of what you look like and how you're interacting with the world, what other people think of you, if you're better or worse or not as good or more or less. And this thinking mind, the more that it's invested in, the more it gets out of line with your body. So then your body has natural impulses or responses to situations, and your thinking mind shines that. So say your body's in a situation where it feels that somebody's being inappropriate to it, the thinking mind might be focused on that you want their friendship or that you want to be liked by them, and therefore what you actually feel or your intuitive feeling in the body is ignored. So you begin to live more and more up here, and you cut off from your organic natural feelings of the body, and you also cut off from what you're actually experiencing around you. The feeling of the sofa, the sights, the sounds, the experiences. So you're actually cutting off from life, and you're beginning to live in a recorded image of yourself, which is quite an amazing thing that a human can do that. Like, just on the practical sense, if you look at it, it's really like amazing that you can have such complex experiences. But what it does is it makes your life feel dead, and actually your very experience of love, who you truly are, of life, who you truly are is love. So your actually very experience of what's happening right now is love and intimacy and everything you've ever looked for. But the imagined person, the thinking person, your image of yourself, thinks that it should be having something so much more grand, like going to big parties or being in 5-star hotels or having Chanel perfume, whatever it might be, or a Gucci bag, or a pedigree dog or cat of some kind. Chihuahua. So what's spoken about in non-duality is it's looking at that identification and seeing that everything you take yourself to be isn't really you. And at some point there is just this energetic movement that happens back to what is, back to who you truly are, which is this moment, and it's energetic rather than being this limited thing that's always in a timeline and sort of stuck in your mind and very limited, and it makes it feel like you are centralized. And it is an energetic movement. It's not intellectual. You don't intellectually get this. You can have many intellectual awakenings which shift things and change things, but it's an energetical shift from being bounded to not being bounded. It's remembering yourself.